starting with the distance between 2 points. So basically, it's as it says, we're going to find the distance, the length between two particular points. Now have a look, I've got you a little diagram here. It's the shape of a triangle, and it's a right angle triangle. So see how if this point is x1, y1, and this point it's x2, y2. Those are two particular points that I'm going to find the distance between. And you can see that just looking at the x values, this length, it's this length, isn't it? Which is going to be the length of x2 minus this little length, isn't it? If I subtract the length of that length from the x2, I would get that distance. So what I do is x2 minus that little bit, which is x1. So that length is x2 minus x1. And same with the y. I want this particular distance here. So if I want that one, I subtract away this little bit from that whole distance, which is y2. And that little distance is y1. So that just distance that I want is going to be y2 minus y1. Okay, so just looking at x and y separately. And now, because we're looking for the distance, if you have a look at that right angle triangle, the distance is basically the hypotenuse. So using our Pythagoras theorem, I'll just call d for distance, or I'll call distance d. The hypotenuse squared, which is d squared, will be x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, just using the Pythagoras theorem. And then to get distance, I simply need to square root everything, which is here, the distance formula. So distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now guys, that's pretty much how the distance formula comes about, but I don't want you guys to draw that up every single time you do a question. Please just memorize this. That's the quickest way. So if you've understood what I've said there, now it's time to memorize the formula. So remember that these are negatives and this is always a plus. Okay, so there we go. That is our distance formula, the first formula of coordinate geometry. Okay, so write that down somewhere and let's try the questions. Starting with question 1, find the distance between 2 points. They give us two specific points, 2, 0 and 5, 4. You can let anything be x1, y1. You can let this one be x1, y1, or you could let this one be x1, y1. Doesn't really matter. So you can label them if you like. I'll just call this x1, y1, and this one x2, y2, like that. You can do that like that if you need some guidance. And then I put it into the formula. So d equals the square root of x2 minus x1, so 5 minus 2, the whole thing squared, plus y2 minus y1, so 4 minus 0 squared. But as I said, guys, you don't have to let this one be x1, y1. You can let this one be x1, y1. So you'd probably go 2 minus 5 squared plus 0 minus 4 squared, won't you? I'll just write that out for you. You could do 2 minus 5 first, and then plus 0 minus 4. These two, either way, you get the exact same answer, so that's why it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you do it like this, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so if you keep sticking to this one, it's going to be 3 squared plus 4 squared. And then 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, add them together, it's 25. We all know that 25 is 5 squared. Remember, the square root and the square cancels each other, so it's pretty much just 5. That's the answer. The distance is 5. So that's how I do it, using the distance formula. And if you do it like this, guys, you get exactly the same answer. Okay, so don't worry about which one you let x1 be and which one you let x2 be, it doesn't matter. So that was question 1. All I do is put it into the formula. That's all there is to this topic. So very easy. Let's try question 2. Find the distance between 2 points. Again, they give us the 2 points. Let's just put it in. So again, guys, if you like, you can label it x1, y1, x2, oops, sorry, y2, isn't it? Not 2 x's. Okay, just label if you need to. And then stick it into the formula. So x2 minus x1, so make sure it's 1 minus minus 2, because x2 is minus 2. 1 minus minus 2. So don't forget to be careful with the signs. Squared plus y2 minus y1. So negative 3 minus 1, the whole thing squared. And then simplify the brackets, guys. 1 minus minus 2 is 1 plus 2, which is 3. So 3 squared. And minus 3 minus 1 is negative 4. So we have negative 4 squared. And then negative squared will always be positive as well. So negative 4 squared is 16. And then 3 squared is 9. 9 plus 16, exactly the same as the previous question, is 25. 25 is 5 squared, so it's just 5. That's just the answer. So you should be able to simplify these kind of roots, because we've done a lot of those in our surds part, haven't we? So hopefully you're okay with surds now. That's question 2. Question 3, again, exactly the same question. x1, y1, x2, y2, sub it into the formula. So negative 8 minus minus 3, so again minus minus, and then negative 6 minus 6, okay, squared for both of them, and add them up. Negative 8 minus minus 3 is negative 8 plus 3, which is negative 5, and negative 6 minus 6 is negative 12. Square them both, guys, they must be both positive. So negative 5 squared is positive 25, and that one's positive 144. Add them together, you get 169. Hopefully most of you know that 169 is 13 squared. So the square root and the square always cancels themselves out, so the answer is just 13. That is the answer, that's the distance. Usually it would be a good idea if you would like to put units at the end. So instead of just saying 13, because we're looking for the actual length of between 2 points, it's a good idea to put some units there, but they don't say it's centimeters, meters, or whatever. So if it doesn't mention, always we just put units. Okay, so it would be a safe way to put in units, just in case your teacher's very, very strict. Okay, so always put your units. Question 4 again. Guys, give it a go. I want you to have a go at yourself, because it's different when I explain and you watch and when you actually give it a go. So can you please pause and try the question and then watch me do it, okay? So what I'm going to do is, again, do the same thing. Put it into my distance formula. x2 minus x1, so 6 minus 2 squared, plus y2 minus y1, so 10 minus 6 squared. Now, guys, I can't stress to you how many mistakes people make in this first step, because they know that 2 is x and 6 is x, but they always happen to mix around. They always go 6 minus 6 and then 10 minus 2, or they always get lost with these x's and y's. You must make sure you match the x's together and the y's together. So it's 6 minus 2 and then 10 minus 6. Please be very, very careful in this first step, okay? Because I can't stress to you how many people make mistakes. And then 6 minus 2 is 4, and 10 minus 6 is 4. So we have 4 squared plus 4 squared, which is 16 plus 16. 16 plus 16 is 32. And then 32 we can simplify it, because 16 times 2 is 32. 16 is a square number. 16 is 4 squared. Remember, we did so much of these in surds, in our topic of surds. So if you're not really familiar with this, I really recommend you to watch some surd videos as well, okay? So 16 is 4 squared. The 4 is a square number. The 4 can pop out. So it's 4 root 2. Only the 2 remains inside the root, remember? So that's the answer, guys. So again, to be safe, I would put units at the end, but not a big deal. That's just the answer, 4 root 2. And the reason why I don't put it into the calculator is because it's safest and best to leave your answer in simplest surd form. So unless they say round your answers to 2 decimal places or 3 significant figures, unless they be very specific with those roundings, I want you to always just leave your answers in the exact simplest surd form. Okay, so just to make sure your answer is exact. Okay, so that was question 4. Again, guys, with question 5, I want most of you to have a go at this on your own. So what I'm going to do is just apply my distance formula. x2 minus x1, so 3 minus 3 for the first one, and then y2 minus y1, so 10 minus 4 for my second bracket. Now we know that 3 minus 3 is 0, so we have 0 squared for the first one, and then 10 minus 4 is 6, so 6 squared. 0 squared is just 0, so we don't really need to consider that. 6 squared, that's what we have left. We know that the square root and the square cancels. We just have 6 as the answer. So it's nice and simple when one becomes eliminated, like this one here. So that is the answer, guys. Have a look. 6 units. That was nice and quick, wasn't it? Question 6. Again, guys, give it a go, okay? Give it a go. The rest is just plainly using the formula, so please give it a go. x2 minus x1. So x2 is 2, minus 2 is x2, x2 is x1, sorry, and minus 2 is x1. So we have 2 minus minus 2. Don't forget, you don't just make that into a minus 2 only. And then y2 minus y1. And then you can clearly see that 4 minus 4 is 0. And then 2 minus minus 2 is 2 plus 2, which becomes 4. So 4 squared and 0 squared. Now 0 squared is nothing, we just have 4 squared left. And again, the square root and the square cancels, we just have the 4 left over. So 4 units is the distance between those 2 points. Get the idea? It's very repetitive. That's all there is, just applying the formula. So probably you've already memorized the formula by now anyway. Question 7. Now this is a bit different because this time they ask you to find a pronumeral y. If the distance between 2 points, this one and this one, is 5. So this time it's a bit different, guys. This time they give you what the distance is. They give you that the distance between these two points is 5. And they give us the first coordinate, it's 3, 1, and they give us a second coordinate, but not quite fully. They just give us the x value, but they don't give us the y value. That's what we want to find. Now I know a lot of you might be confused at this because it's a bit different to what we're used to, but guys, even if you're confused, just apply the formula. Just put it into the formula and see what you have, okay? So don't just stop and not do it, okay? So have a look. I'm going to put it into my formula, square root of x2. So this is, I'll just label it x1, y1, x2, y2. So x2 minus x1. So I have 6 minus 3 for my first one, 6 minus 3 squared, plus. And then y2 minus y1, which is y minus 1. Just leave it in terms of y. I know that we don't have y, but just leave it as y. Y minus 1 and then squared. That distance is 5. They give us the distance this time, it's 5. So I'm going to let that whole thing be 5 instead of d for distance. Now guys, simplify it. We know that 6 minus 3 is 3, so we have 3 squared. And this one we can't simplify any further because it's got that y in it. So just leave it as it is, just don't touch it for now. Now guys, I don't want to have that square root. That square root is annoying me. What do we do usually to get rid of square roots, guys? To evaporate that to evaporate the root, we always square both sides like that. So the square root and the square cancel, so we just have the inside of that root left over, and 5 squared, that's what we have on the right hand side. Okay, so we don't have any more root, which is good. It's easier to solve now. Simplify it. I'm going to move this 3 squared over to the other side, so I have 5 squared minus 3 squared. I only have the y minus 1 squared left on the left hand side. Now 5 squared minus 3 squared is 25 minus 9. 25 minus 9 is 16. Okay, so we pretty much have y minus 1 squared is 16. Now guys, a lot of people tend to expand this out and then get lost. Well guys, I don't want you to expand this out. The easiest way is to get rid of the square, what do? We square root. But do not forget the plus or minus. So have a look here guys, so because y minus 1 squared is 16, y minus 1 is the square root of 16 with the plus or minus. This is very important, guys, plus or minus, because negative root 16 squared is also positive. So we must consider both positive and negative values. This is something that I can't stress enough about. Everyone makes mistakes. Okay, so now we no longer have the third. Now we know that, guys, root 16 is 4. So we have plus or minus 4. So I can say that y minus 1 is positive 4 or negative 4. I'm just going to separate those two equations out so I can solve them individually separately. Now it's minus 1 here, so to get rid of that, I need to add 1. So I'm going to add 1 to 4 and add 1 to negative 4. 4 plus 1 is 5, negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Those two are the answers. We have two solutions. Okay, so we have two values of y. Have a look. That's how you do it. So a lot of algebra is involved, so it's very important for you to be very, very careful. Okay, so that is the answer, guys. Have a look. Now the reason why we have two answers, guys, is because, have a look, I'll just draw you a little quick diagram just in case you want to know. Now 3, 1 is, let's just say 3 is there and 1's there, that's the first point. And 6y, okay, 6 is here, and then we say the distance is 5. Now y could be up here, or y could be down here. The reason why it could be two solutions, because this could have a distance of 5, and this could also have a distance of 5. So for one x value, we could have two y values because those two distances could both reflect 5 units. Okay, so that's why. So it could be the one's positive and one negative. That's why we have two solutions. It's not just one. Another spot can also give a distance of 5 units. That is the reason why. So you can consider that one by drawing a little graph if you want to know. But that was question 7. Let's move on. Question 8. Again, it's very similar. If you guys are really understanding this, give it a go on your own. Okay, try it on your own. Now, it says find x this time. So this time is pretty much exactly the same as the previous question, but this time they don't have an x value. That's the renewal that we want to find. And be careful, guys. This time the distance is in third form. It's 2 root 2. But just, guys, do exactly the same method. So I'm going to use my distance formula, x minus minus 2. So x minus minus 2 in the first bracket, squared, plus y2 minus y1. So 5 minus 3 squared. And that is equal to the distance given to us, 2 root 2. Now, guys, simplify it by squaring both sides because we want to get rid of that root. So if I square it, the square root and the square cancel, so we just have that inside part left over. And then we have to square this side. So make sure you square both in both terms. Make sure you square 2 and the root 2. So 2 squared times root 2 squared. Simplify. Negative negative makes a positive. 5 minus 3 is 2. And then you know that 2 squared is 4 and root 2 squared is just 2. Square root and the square cancels. So I just have 4 times 2 left on my right hand side. Now simplify by moving the 2 squared over to the other side by subtracting. Now 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 2 squared, which is 4. 8 minus 4 is just 4. That's how we simplify it. Easy stuff. Now, guys, what did I say if I want to get rid of the square? Square root. But don't forget the plus or minus sign. So plus or minus the square root of 4. So only that part left inside the left-hand side. So now, plus or minus root 4. Root 4 is just 2, so we have plus or minus 2. Separate out those two equations, like separately. So I have x plus 2 is positive 2, or x plus 2 is negative 2. Now, because this is a positive 2, I need to get rid of it by subtracting 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from positive 2 and subtract 2 from negative 2. 2 minus 2 is 0, and negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. Those two are the answers, and hopefully you understand why we have, again, two different solutions. Okay, so you must have two solutions, 0 and negative 4. That's the answer. Okay, let's see for the past all these questions. All we did was plainly use that formula, so hopefully it's in your head by now.